Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Shabbos Daf Kuf Nun Gimel ends the 23rd parak of the Masechta, parak Shayel, and begins the last parak in the 24th parak, Misha Hichshech. So the end of the chapter is discussing the world to come and a person's preparations to get in there and have a positive share in it. And the Gemara has a few pieces of advice here. First of all, the Gemara says, how can you tell if somebody is destined to a nice portion in Olam Haba, in the world to come? So the Gemara has a couple of pieces of evidence here. Rav Yehuda, the son of Shmuel Bar Shila, said in the name of Rav, by a person's eulogy you can tell, because if the people are stirred to tears by the eulogy, then it shows that he was a good person and they recognize the truth in what's being said, and he does have a portion in the world to come. If, however, they remain unmoved, then obviously he does not have a portion in the world to come. So the Gemara has a question on this. This is what Rav said, but Rav himself, before he died, told Shmuel Bar Shila himself that make sure that you give a nice, warm, rousing eulogy for me, because I'm going to be standing right there listening to everything you say. So if he felt it was true that if you're a good person and you're getting Olam Haba, your crowd will be roused to tears anyway, what do you need to tell him to give a good eulogy for? So Gemara answers, no, because you need the eulogy anyway. Without a eulogy, no crowd is going to be moved. With a person who is a ben Olam Haba, a good eulogy will bring the crowd to tears. Otherwise, the crowd will not be moved. Either if there's no eulogy, or if he's a bad person, the crowd will not be moved. On that subject, the Gemara has a conversation between Abaye and Rabba. Rabba was a very strong Rav in his town, and he was constantly rebuking the people, and therefore he was disliked. And Abaye was afraid that nobody would give a good hesped for him. So Abaye said to somebody like you, who's hated by all the people in Pumbedisa, who's going to give a hesped for you? So he said, you give one, and Rabba Bar Rav Chanan will give one. That'll be enough. Okay, another way to tell if somebody's ben Olam Haba, Rav says, Rav Lozer asked him, and he said, how can you tell? And Rav said, by the pasuk v'oznecha tishma'na davar me'acharecha loymar zeh haderech lechu boi kisa'aminu v'chisas milu, that you should, if you hear somebody behind you saying, this is the way to go this way, left to right, then you know you're a ben Olam Haba. Meaning, if at your funeral people say we should learn from this person's life how to properly live, that means that he is a ben Olam Haba. Okay. Next, the Gemara goes back to the Psukim in Koheles describing a man's passing from the world, and the pasuk says, "V'savu b'shok haseiftim." The person who died goes back to his eternal home, while the people at the funeral will go home through the streets. So on that, the people in Galil say, make sure you do mitzvahs, good deeds, in front of your coffin. And people in Yehuda say, do it behind your coffin. Meaning to say, do good deeds during your lifetime, so the people speaking in front of the coffin or behind the coffin at your eulogy will have what to say. Umar says it's not a machlokes, just it was different minhagim. In the Galil, the eulogizers stood in front of the coffin, and Yehuda, they stood behind the coffin. Okay, now, we got to make sure to do tshuva. So Rabbi Elazar says to his Talmidim, do tshuva one day before you die. So Talmidim said, but we don't know when we're going to die. So he said, okay, it's exactly the point. Make sure you do tshuva every day, because you may die tomorrow. And the Gemara brings this out with a pasuk in Koheles. The pasuk says, you should make sure that your clothing is always white, and and you have oil on your head. So what does this refer to? So the Gemara says clothing being white refers to that your body should be clean of sins, and Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai gives a mashal. There was a king who invited his servants to a special suda, a party, but he didn't tell them what time. So the smart ones went and they got dressed up, and they made sure that they were properly prepared at any time, because they said that the king can call us at any time. He can have the party ready in a second. Therefore, we have to be ready right now. But the fools, they just went around there at work, and they said, when we'll get the invitation, then we'll get dressed, because it takes time to prepare a suda. In the meantime, all of a sudden, out of the blue, the king said, okay, come now. And everybody had to rush to come. The wise ones were dressed properly, and the king was very happy to greet them, and he said, sit down, enjoy the suda. And the fools, they were filthy from their work, and the king was angry with them, and he said, why weren't you ready? And said, you have to stand here and watch, and you can't have any. So the Gemara says that the son-in-law of Rav Meir said the name of Rav Meir, that's giving them too much credit. They weren't even allowed to stand there. If they stand there, they look like the waiters. So waiters at least belong at a Suda. These guys had to look out of place. They had to actually sit down at the Suda. They were not allowed to eat and drink. They just had to watch. Like the pasuk says, Hashem, Hashem says, my servants will eat and you will be hungry. My servants will drink and you will be thirsty. My servants will be happy and sing mitov lev from happy hearts. And you will cry from pain of the heart. Now, on the pasuk of let your clothing be white and your head have oil, the Gemara has another pshat here. Clothing be white means you should always have white tzitzis, even if you can't get tchelas. The blue strings, you should still have the white ones. And oil on your head means you should always wear tefillin. That is the end of Perek Shoel, and now we begin Perek Mishehech. The first Mishnah in Perek Mishehech discusses the halacha about what a person should do if he's walking along the road and Shabbos begins while he's walking and he's carrying his wallet. So how can he get his wallet home? He doesn't want to leave his wallet in the street. So interestingly, although in other situations of pressing monetary loss, Chazal made restrictions to prevent you from doing Yisurim, here they made leniencies. And they allowed people to violate many Yisuri D'Rabbanan in order to get that wallet home, because Chazal understood that if you wouldn't give a person a way of carrying his wallet home in a permitted way, he would end up doing it in a forbidden way and violating the Isser D'Oraisa of carrying 4 amos in a Rosh Hashanah. So the Mishnah gives us a couple of solutions. The Gemara is going to go through the why this is permitted, what exactly is permitted to bring back, who's permitted to bring it, and what is the order of preference. We have up to 6 different solutions. What is the order of preference as to which one you should use? Okay, so the Mishnah begins as follows. It says that somebody was walking along the road and the sun sets and he's carrying his wallet, so you should give it to a guy. The guy should carry it to his house for him. If he doesn't have a guy, he should put it on the back of his donkey, and then when he gets into the outer part of the city where it's already within the walls, so it's somewhat watched there, it is safe there, he can find a safe spot. So then if there are non-muktzah kalim on the donkey, he should take them off with his hands and stow them somewhere. If there are muktzah kalim, then he just has to unstrap the saddle or the saddle bags and let it fall to the floor on its own. Okay, that's the Mishnah. The daf today will focus primarily on the first half. And first of all, the Gemara wants to know, why is this permitted? Why are you allowed to give your wallet to the guy to carry it for you? It's forbidden to have a guy do malacha for you on Shabbos. So the Gemara says the Chazal knew that if we wouldn't give you a permitted way of doing it, you would end up carrying it yourself and be over an Isser D'Oraisa. So therefore we said, better we'll take off the Isser D'Rabbanan and let you give it to the guy. Now, what is he allowed to carry? So Rava says only his wallet, but if he found something in the street, he can't carry that home. This entire dispensation is only for a situation where he's pained over the loss of his money. Something he finds that he can't bring in, he's not pained about. Now the question is, what if he found something earlier, significantly before Shabbos? Is now that considered part of his money? Or is it still not so important because he found it and therefore he didn't work hard for it? So there's 2 versions of this. According to the first version, Rava says that it is okay. That is considered his money. According to the second version, Rava is not sure, and the Gemara leaves it as a teiku. Now the Gemara points out that the Mishnah clearly said it has to be his wallet. Why would I think that it's something that he found? The Gemara says you may just think that it says wallet because that's the usual thing that you have on you. And it's lav dafka, it's not specific. Okay, now the Gemara goes into the order of what solutions we have. So the solutions are going to be as follows. Give it to a guy, put it on the donkey. Give it to a cheresh, shaita, or katan. A cheresh is a deaf person who in the days of Chazal did not have the ability to learn anything and therefore had very little understanding of what was going on, and he was not obligated in mitzvos. A shaita is someone who is developmentally disabled and therefore is not chayav in mitzvos, and a katan is a child who's also not obligated in mitzvos. And then there's a last 6th potential solution which remains a secret, and the Gemara will discuss it at the end of this list. So first of all, the Gemara wants to know what the order of preference here is. So the Gemara says the most preferred option is to give it to a guy, even rather than putting it on the donkey. The reason is that there's an Isser D'Oraisa to have your donkey do work for you. Your donkey is not allowed to, you are not allowed to drive a donkey carrying objects for you on Shabbos. The guy, there is no Isser D'Oraisa, he could work for you. It's an Isser D'Rabbanan, and Chazal took that off. However, the Isser D'Oraisa we wanted to avoid. However, if it's the donkey or any of the other ones, the Chereshayta or Katan, we prefer to use the donkey because at least that's not human. Chereshayta and Katan, you will get confused and end up allowing a adult Jew to do it. More likely, anyway, that you will, and therefore we prefer that you use the donkey than a person, a Jewish person, the permitted manner of using the donkey so that you don't violate the Yisur D'Oraisa, the Gemara will discuss later. Okay, now between the Cheresh Shaita and the Katan, the Shaita is the preferred option because he is completely not obligated in mitzvahs, he's completely non-functional, and therefore he has no understanding of what's happening. Between the Cheresh and the Katan, we're not sure. The Gemara notes that a Cheresh does have some understanding and a Katan does have some understanding. So the Gemara says that it depends who you hold like. Rav Elazar says that a Cheresh is a suffix. We are not sure whether or not he understands what's going on or not because he can't speak and he can't hear. So Rav Eliezer even holds that if a Cheresh takes off Truma, it is a suffix whether that's considered Truma or not, and only Kohanim are allowed to eat it. Nobody else is allowed to eat it because the Cheresh may understand what's going on. So according to him, you should definitely have the Katan do it first. The question is, what about according to the Rabbanon who argue on Rav Eliezer and say that the Truma of a Cheresh does not count at all? The Gemara here quotes the Mishnah. The Rabbanan say that there are 5 people whose Truma doesn't count at all, and that is Truma which is separated by a Cheresh Shaita Katan, somebody who doesn't own it and has no permission to separate it, or a guy, even if he has permission, because you can't make a guy into a Shliach. So all these 5 aren't Truma at all. Therefore, the Rabbanan are clearly holding that a Cheresh has no clear understanding. The question is, which do we prefer, a Cheresh or a Katan? Both are not Chayav in mitzvos, and the Gemara says it's a suffix. We don't know which one we prefer. And the reason for each one is as follows. Maybe a Cheresh is better because he is never going to grow into an adult who is obligated in mitzvos, and therefore he's completely set apart from mitzvos. On the other hand, maybe a Katan is better because at least he's a child, and it's clear that he's not chayav. If you see a Cheresh, you may not realize that he is not obligated in mitzvos, and therefore you may end up mixing up a Cheresh. You may learn from the fact that a Cheresh is allowed to do this, that even an adult is allowed to do it, and there's a potential pitfall over there. Okay. Now the Gemara says, what if you don't have any of these? Is there a 6th solution? And the Gemara says there is one, but the Chachamim did not reveal it. What is it? The Gemara says you can carry less than 4 amos and stop, less than 4 amos and stop. Therefore, there is no Isser D'Rabbanan. There is no Isser D'Oraisa. There's only Isser D'Rabbanan of carrying less than 4 amos. And the Rabbanan let you violate that in order to get your wallet into the house. Now, question is, why is this hidden? Why didn't they reveal this solution? And the Gemara says a pasuk in Mishlei Kvoid Elokim Hisaser Dovar Haster Dovar, for the honor of Hashem you have to hide things, meaning it's a potential pitfall here that people will get confused and end up carrying it more than 4 amos. Kvoid Melachim Chakor Dovar, for the honor of kings you can investigate things, you don't have to hide anything. That's just the end of the pasuk. Okay. Now the Gemara notes that these solutions were one of the 18 things that was decreed on the day that Chachamim went to visit Hananiah ben Garoin. What happened over there was that the Sefer Yecheskel was found to be full of contradictions to halacha, to have many contradictions to halacha, and the Chachamim were considering hiding it, putting it in Geniza. But Hananiah said, I'm going to investigate it, and he took a storehouse, a long-term supply of food and oil for light with him, and he went up to his attic, and he stayed there until he solved all the problems. So the Gemara says that the Chachamim went to visit him, and there in that spot they found that a large representation of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai were there, and Beis Shammai was more numerous, and therefore they voted on 18 rules, 18 takanas that they put into place that day. This was one of the rules that was put into place on that day, and now the Gemara quotes a brisa that notes whether or not this was a good thing, those rules that they made, and it's a machlokes. Rav Elazar says it was a great thing, and Rav Elazar was from the yeshiva of Shammai. He said that it was a great thing and it was wonderful, and it's compared to a basket that was filled up to overflowing, and everything was held in place. The Gemara compares it to a basket filled with vegetables, and you pour in mustard seed. So you're adding more things, and the mustard seed holds the vegetables in place that they shouldn't fall out. It's very fine grains, the mustard seed. Rabbi Yeshua was from Beis Hillel and was Rav Elazar's opponent in the famous Gemara of Tana Shalachnai. Rabbi Yeshua said that was a bad thing that they did, and it was overfull, and everything fell out, and all the rules and restrictions that they made there actually prevented Torah from being observed properly, because people ended up violating Yisuri Deraisa because of that. And he compares it to a basket full of honey or a bowl full of honey, and you try to put in pomegranates and nuts, and what ends up happening is that it makes the honey splash out, and therefore you're losing what was in there before, not holding on to what was in there before. Okay, now the Gemara discusses why is it okay for you to have your donkey carry the wallet for you. That's an Isser Deraisa. It's an Isser Deraisa for the donkey or any of your animals to work for you on Shabbos. So Gemara answers that the solution here is as follows. You put the wallet on the donkey as he's moving. The reason why that's okay is because the donkey doesn't actually do an akira, a havara, and a hanacha. As we recall, the only way to violate the Isser Deraisa of carrying is to move an object, is to uproot an object from being at rest, transfer it at least 4 amos or into a different domain, and then put it back to a state of rest. Here the donkey didn't do any of those 2 things because you put it on him as he was walking. He received the wallet in mid havara. He never did an akira. He never uprooted it from being at rest. And therefore that's only an Isser D'Rabbanan. And because it's an Isser D'Rabbanan, they allowed it on the donkey in the situation of saving your wallet. So the Gemara says, but hold on a second. The donkey is for sure going to stop as he's walking. He's going to stop to relieve himself, and then when he starts again, that's an akira, and then there's avar and anachas, so there will be an Isser Deraisa. So Gemara says, so when he stops, you make sure to take the wallet off and put it back on him again once he has started walking. So Gemara says, but if that's the case, so then why do you need the donkey for? You could just put this on your friend, an adult male Jew, put it on him. It's only an Isser D'Rabbanan, and therefore it is allowed. The Gemara explains that the rules are as follows. If you were to pick up an object from the floor as you were walking yourself, that would be an Isser Deraisa. Putting it onto your friend would be an Isser D'Rabbanan, and an Isser D'Rabbanan that's an Isser Deraisa on yourself, we did not allow to get your wallet in on a Shabbos. We only allowed that on an animal, where that would only be an Isser D'Rabbanan, and therefore we allowed it on the animal to save the wallet. Now the Gemara over here adds another halacha. Ravad bar Ava says if you were carrying a bundle on your shoulders and the sun sets on you, so you didn't do an akira, you didn't start moving the object from at rest because it was already on you and you were already walking as Shabbos began. So what should you do? So the Gemara says you should run all the way home. Why? If you're walking and end up stopping and then you do an akira, transferring an hanacha. So if you run, you'll remember not to stop. So therefore you should just keep going. You should jog all the way home. So the Gemara asks, well, hold a second. In order to get in the door, you're going to have to stop for a second to open the door, and then when you transfer it into the house, right there you just did an Isser Deraisa of transferring from Rishus to Rishus. The Gemara says, so you'll avoid that by throwing it off your shoulders backwards. You're going to do the hanacha in a strange way. You're going to place it down with a shinoi. It won't be an Isser Deraisa, and therefore we're going to allow you to do that on Shabbos. Okay, whenever we get a new subject, the Gemara launches into an exploration of the Isser of Mechamer. That's the malacha of driving a donkey in front of you as you are walking. And the Gemara is going to bring 3 opinions as to whether or not it's an Isser Deraisa that includes kares and skila, or it does not include kares and skila, or it's not even an Isser Deraisa at all. We're going to have 3 opinions on the subject, but today we're only going to see one of the 3 opinions, and that's Rabbi Bar Chama. Rabbi Bar Chama says the Isser of Mechamer is a regular malacha, and it's an Isser Deraisa in all senses of the word. If you do it on purpose, you have to bring a carbon. If you do it on purpose, you chayiv skila. If you do it by mistake, b'shegeg, you have to bring a carbon chatos. And the Gemara says why. So Rabbi explains, because there's a pasuk that says "Leisasakal malacha," don't do any work. Ata ubehemtecha. So it compares you and your animal, just like having your animal do work, where you are actively driving the animal and working it. Just like that is linked to you. Just like if you were to do work, it would be an Isser Deraisa. You making your animal do work, again actively driving it, would be an Isser Deraisa and is included in chatas and skila. So Gemara says that Rava disagrees. Rava says there's 2 reasons why it's not correct. First of all, the Torah compares all chatos to avodah zarah, and just like avodah zarah, you're not violating, and you don't have to bring a carbon chatos unless you actually do something with your body. So driving the donkey, you don't actually do anything with the body. All you do is call to him and give him instructions. So that can't be a chatos and a skila. And the other rejection of this is if you look at a Mishnah, there's a Mishnah that says that somebody who's Mechal Shabbos with a type of Isser that includes Chatos and Skila, and it goes further. So that means that there are some Isurei Deraisa that are Chilul Shabbos that do not include Chatos and Skila. What could that possibly be? That must be referring to driving the donkey where you're not doing anything physically with your body. So Gemara says this is not a proof. Because first of all, there are other things which may be what the Brisa means. The Mishnah means when it says that there are Isurei Deraisa that are not including Skila and Chatos, and that are violating Tchum Shabbos, according to Rabbi Akiva, who says that that's not an Isser, that doesn't have Skila and Chatos. Or lighting a fire, according to Rabbi Yossi, says the reason why all the malachos are said as one, but fire is said separately, is because fire is different. Fire is not an Isser that involves Skila and Chatos. Fire is only a lav. Okay, there are two more opinions coming up, but we'll save that for Daf Kufnei.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.